everyone. Now, this Friday, Jamie, Gary and myself will be back with our regular episode of It's Called Soccer. In fact, we have the Fulham and US men's national team defender Anthony Robinson as our special guest. But we have a bonus episode for you today. A few weeks ago, Gary and I took to Central Park for an amble that turned into a hike. Here it is.
Gary, it's a beautiful day in New York City. A couple of Brits taking a walk in Central Park.
Yeah.
And we have known each other-ish, kind of, sort of like through football and through broadcasting. Maybe known of each other. I mean, I've been interviewed a few times years ago, but known of each other probably. And now we're doing this podcast together. So I thought we'd have a little chat.
Well, I think we should. Well, forget that. Where did you start working then in television?
I love you just gone straight in.
Yeah, where did you actually start?
The BBC. I started BBC when I was 21.
Always doing sport?
Always doing football, yeah. So I won a competition to start at the BBC. Would you believe that? When I was at university.
Are you at Posh University then?
No, University of East Anglia in Norwich. Just kind of regular. Dad wanted me to go to Oxford, let him down. So,
did you not qualify or did you?
No, I think I could have done with the grades, but I wanted to do drama. That was the plan, to be an actress.
Okay.
And they didn't do drama at Oxford or Cambridge. So they did in Norwich at University of East Anglia. So I went there and then I met this lovely girl and we became super close and we decided that we wanted to become a double act like French and Saunders. Remember French and Saunders?
Oh, okay, yeah, remember.
Right.
They were comedians though.
You're funny.
So you...
So my friend Lucy...
So are you actually looking to be a comedian?
Not comedians as such, more like double act kind of, like French and Saunders are comedians, but they did like sitcoms and stuff.
Script writing.
Sitcom, yeah. So we did quite a lot of our own stuff, right? And we thought this was going to be the future. She was the year below me.
So what were you called?
Lot and Lowe. Her name was Lucy Lot. It was going to be the Lot and Lowe show.
Lot and Lowe show?
The Lot and Lowe show.
Did it ever get made? Did you ever make a pilot?
Well, no, because she was the year below me. I graduated. I said, don't worry, Luce, I'll just go work for a year, get us an agent.
Right.
And then when you graduate, we'll just launch ourselves and it'll be easy and fine. But in the year that I was supposed to be earning money and finding us an agent, I won this competition to be a football reporter on Football Focus.
So you ditched her and left her in the lurch?
I kind of did, but she was the one who gave me the leaflet. Now? Yeah, I spoke to her last week. She's fine. Everything's fine. She's 10,000 times more talented than me as an actress.
What's she doing now?
She's living in Australia, actually. She's living in Australia with her family, but she never entered the... I feel bad about it. Oh, God, it's like a therapy session. I do feel a bit bad about that, but she gave me the leaflet to apply for the competition. She's like, you like football, you should go for it. So I did, and then I won it. And
how did you... Because you were obviously passionate about football, or...
Yeah. So she says to me, because there's not many women who like football, not many females, you should give it a go. I'm sure they're looking for a female. I thought, no, this is 2002. And they obviously were. My dad took me to Palace when I was a kid, and I've just been huge football fan. So, like, on my own, pretty much, one or two other friends, usually just by myself loving football. So I applied, and I kept getting to the next round and the next round. And then the final was at Television Centre, where I had to interview Ray Stubbs, who was presenting Football Focus, and then do some pieces to camera and some other journalistic things.
So where did you go in at? What sort of reporter or journalist?
Yeah, so it was a reporter on Football Focus and Final Score.
Wow, I tell you what, you think about it, how your paths in life are determined by, like, how have you ended, you think about where you've ended up now?
Gary, there's no chance I'd be standing here today, anywhere near standing here today, had I not got that leaflet from Lucy, who picked it up at the checkout of Virgin Megastore. It was on the back of the Cornflakes packet. BBC Talent, search for this, that, and the next thing. So, yeah, it's amazing. It's crazy.
Wow.
I know. So that's how I started the BBC.
And your first gig was as a reporter?
So yes, I was a
That's
reporter.
obviously a big break, but what happens after that? So tell me where you go from there and how it sort of pans out and how you end up here today.
It hasn't been that kind of upward trajectory that I think it's probably quite normal in everyone's careers, it's up and down. But the BBC, it was a 6-month contract and they didn't renew it. So that was tough after 6 months.
So they binned you?
They said there wasn't enough money to renew it, but that I could go freelance and they use me. Shut up!
It's a nice way of bidding you, isn't it?
But they did use me as a freelance. So I went freelance for a little bit.
Okay.
And then I took a job at BBC News 24, which is now...
The World Service type thing?
It's not the World Service, I think it's called the News Channel now.
Right, okay.
But the rolling news, to do the sports news. And a little bit on Radio 5 Live. So I was kind of got back in the BBC, was doing that, but I was kind of feeling like I was a bit bored, reading off an auto cue and just doing the sports news. So I got a call one day from somebody saying, we're starting up a new company. It's called Setanta Sports.
Oh, wow.
And we'd like you to come and talk to us about joining. And the role would be pitchside reporter / kind of co-host of the Blue Square Premier, the conference.
Right.
With Steve Bauer.
Yes.
So it's going to be Steve Bauer as the commentator,
yeah,
and you as the pitchside reporter, and you'll both kind of present it. And I thought, well, I was at the BBC with a staff job. I mean, people don't leave the BBC, especially with a staff job.
No.
But I was really bored, and I thought maybe this is one of those situations in life where you need to step backwards to then step forwards. And it was a big, big risk to leave, but I left and I went. And of course, Setanta lasted a couple of years, and then they went bust. But it was the best 2 years to learn football at that level, to be inside. You know, we did stuff back then, Gary, they're trying to do again now. I read an article the other day saying that they're trying to do interviews with players when they come off from being subbed.
Like flash interviews,
I was doing
you
that.
mean?
Yeah,
oh, when they go
during
for
the game.
subs. Oh, okay, yeah.
I was in dressing rooms, I was interviewing the managers during the game, in the technical area.
What were the attitudes like then towards women actually working in football? Because obviously I know what they're like now, and it's not perfect now, shall we say, but what was it like then?
Terrible. Really, really, really hard.
You must have been getting a load of stick.
Load of stick. I mean, I used
Any examples?
Yeah. Security. I had a security guard at Oxford United, of all places, because I would just get dog's abuse all game.
Right.
If I had to go in the middle of the field, which I often did to interview players while they were warming up, I would go around interviewing players. The chants from the terraces to this girl in her Ugg boots walking around the centre. I mean, there was no women anywhere.
Why were you wearing Ugg boots?
Well, because it was freezing. That's not really the point. The point is,
I mean,
this little girl.
maybe you deserved a little bit of stick for the Ugg boots, but I mean, not for the fact you're a woman, but maybe the Ugg boots.
That's fair. That's fair. Just one moment, I was inside the dressing room before a game, supposed to speak to the assistant manager.
Right.
We were sitting on the locker room benches.
Yeah.
And they were coming to me live, and Steve was going to throw to me live. And they were counting down to Rebecca and 5, and just before they came to me, the assistant manager went, "Mani. And they went 3, 2, 1, go." And I'm like, I'm
Sounds like a poodle or something.
I know. And that was just one of those things where.
So what did you do then? You carried on presenting,
of course,
obviously.
Yeah, they threw to me. I was like, ah, and you just forget about it, and you don't tell anybody, you don't complain about it, because that was the culture then. I didn't tell anybody. I don't think I even really thought it was anything other than a bit cheeky. But can you imagine that now?
I'm not going to ask you who it was, but are they still in the game now?
No. And I'm not. You know, it was a long time ago. And again, I don't think it came from a place.
What year was that? Sorry.
2007.
17 years ago.
Yeah.
But I mean, I won't say anything. I know it's a long time ago. You say attitudes have changed, but in 2007.
I know. I know.
The idea of saying to a woman reporter that's working on television, just about to do an interview with you, come and sit on my knee. It was wrong in 2007, that, by the way.
I know, but
it's not like not 1957 or 1967.
I know, but there wasn't. So another example for you, right? I've told this story before, but remember the game when Thierry Henry came back to Arsenal? He came back for a short amount of time. I think he was on loan from the New York Red Bulls.
Yeah.
And I was presenting Arsenal Leeds in the FA Cup, and I was pitchside with Martin Keown and Robbie Savage.
Yeah.
And we were in front of the Leeds fans.
Yeah.
Pitchside desk, 6,000 away fans at the Emirates. Like, are you putting me in front of 6,000 Leeds fans?
And this was through ESPN?
Yeah, ESPN. The entire pre-game, all they sang was, "Does she?" People watching will know what the chant was. It's grotesque. So, and of course, all the microphones are there.
Yeah.
So that everybody back home, my mum texted me, "Are you okay? We can hear it." Robbie Savage, of all people, bless him, I never forget it, was like, at the commercial break, he was like, "Are you all right?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I'm fine. What's anyone going to do about it?" And I remember going home that night thinking, I haven't complained to anyone, should I? Well, no, because if I complain, then what? There's nobody doing anything about this, even though it's 2008 or whatever it was back then. Now, of course, that would be like headline news because people would hear it, it would be everywhere, social media. But then it was just move on, everyone laughed about it.
Yeah.
You just had to block it out and just get on with your job. And that happened everywhere I went. Old Trafford, I have to walk from the tunnel
up to the halfway line.
It was a nightmare, walking along there. It was a nightmare with the comments and the catcalls and the shouting and everywhere I went. And that's part of the big reason why I ended up leaving England.
So you left England because of that?
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say I left it because of at all. But I was coming to the end of my contract with ESPN. I'd done 4 years pitchside reporter in the tunnel, and I was just kind of...
Was there no pathway? Was it the pathway that you...
A little bit pathway. I was the number 2 to Ray Stubbs, who I adore and could not speak highly enough of. But I just didn't think I was ever going to be the number 1. I couldn't see anywhere that I thought I'd be the number 1. And I was kind of at the end of my tether being at games because of the abuse.
Yeah.
And also I found it's the hardest job in football, that. The pitchside tunnel interviewer is the hardest job. And
it's a thankless task, isn't it?
Totally thankless. And you can only ever do it wrong.
Well, you need to be good though as well. Because you're in there And I'm imagining I'm imagining a game where you're interviewing an opposition manager who's been beat or a manager who feels like they've been wronged. They're a little bit usually semi-passive aggressive, aren't they?
Semi.
And also the questions, they can also give you one-word answers, so you've got to be sharp on your feet as well. I mean, I think it's a tough role.
It was really hard, and in those days as well, with some of the older managers that were slightly more old-fashioned, it was even harder because in 2009, again, Claire Tomlinson did it before me.
Yeah.
I saw her at an event just after I took the job, and she said to me, "Good luck, you're going to need it." And she was right. She was right. I did need it, and I didn't think I was that good. And I wouldn't sleep the night before Man United games often. Certain managers that I found really, really hard. It was so difficult. So difficult.
Who's the most difficult manager?
Sir Alex Ferguson was so hard.
Was it?
I mean, I remember the first time I had to interview him. I was 26. I remember him walking towards me. I was standing in the hallway at Old Trafford in the tunnel by the advertising boards, and he walked towards me from
pre or post?
Pre, because it was going to be my first ever interview. He didn't know me from Adam.
Yeah.
My knees, Gary, physically knocked together.
Yeah.
I was terrified.
But that would be natural, man or woman, wouldn't it?
Without
that
doubt.
feeling would be.
And
you know what I mean?
Yes, I don't think Sir Alex treated me any differently because I was a woman.
No.
I think Sir Alex is just really difficult.
Yeah.
But then, what was really interesting was a couple of years into interviewing him, and I would interview him a lot. Like, we were at United games every month.
Yeah.
He came into the interview room at Bolton pre-game, and we used to do the late game, so all the results were coming in. So he came in to look at the video printer on Sky.
Yeah.
And my fiance at the time was manager of Bristol Rovers.
Right.
And it was not going well at the time, and I just said, "Hi, Sir Alex," and he came and stood next to me, didn't say anything, and up popped Bristol Rovers, just conceded a goal. I looked at it, and I couldn't help it, being the fiance of a manager, I just went, "Oh," like that, naturally. And he looked at me and he said, "Are you a fan?" And I said, "Oh no, that's my fiance, he's a manager of Bristol Rovers." And he changed. He suddenly, I think, saw me in a really different light. And from that day on, even to now, our relationship is incredible.
But he was faced with reporters.
Oh my
He was
gosh.
so faced with reporters. I mean, in terms of, because I think control was important to him, controlling the narrative of an interview, controlling the pre-match, the post-match, people not asking him questions that he didn't like. He was, wasn't he? That's what he was like.
Yeah, he was. And I remember there was one time at Birmingham, and United had lost 1-0, I think, and after the game, everybody was talking about Wayne Rooney being isolated up front. That was just kind of a narrative, not on social media, but in the press room and stuff. I'd heard it. So I asked him that, and I said, do you feel that he was a bit isolated tonight? And he replied straight away with, "Were you even watching the game?" So I just kept the microphone there. Somebody once told me, just keep the microphone there, and they'll keep going, and they'll keep going, and he did. But there were times like that, and then I'd get in the car, and I'd sit at Old Trafford trying to get out in that traffic, and I'd think, why do I do this? Why? This is horrible. And it wasn't just Alex, there was lots of times, most times actually, that I remember thinking, this isn't worth it. This is just so thankless.
There's a number of women that I've worked with down the years who feel the same way, I think.
Yeah.
But in the end, they just feel, this isn't worth it.
It's just, no. And so that's why I decided ESPN had lost the rights, and I was coming to the end of my 4-year deal. And I just thought, I think I'm done. I think I'd done 11 years. I didn't think I was going to get to the #1 host job, which is what I wanted. I didn't think that was going to happen. In those days, I think BT were about to take over.
Yeah.
So there wasn't yet really a rival to Sky, and obviously I wasn't going to go back to the BBC. There's no jobs. So I said,
what happened then? You took the job over here, or you came over here before you got the job?
So I was in that final year of ESPN. I'd had an exceptionally bad experience at Goodison Park one day. I came home and I said to my fiance, "I'm done. At the end of this season, I'm going to run a B&B. I'm out. I'm done." Not Gary, no joke. 6 weeks later, phone rings my agent saying, "Are you sitting down?" And I was like, "Yeah." He said, "NBC have just called. They've won the rights to the Premier League in America. They'd like to talk to you about joining them." And I said, "Well, as pitchside, because I'm not doing pitchside." He said, No, as presenter."
Wow.
And I'm like, "All right, let's talk."
Good timing.
And then that's kind of how it happened. So it was really good timing, yeah.
And did it feel right straight away, or has it been hard work? At the beginning, was it hard work?
No.
It felt right straight away?
Straight away. Oh, actually, that's a lie. The first week, rehearsals, when I had no idea what they were talking about with the American television words, and the amazing amount of commercial breaks and the way you go in and out of a break and all of the mechanics of television, I was like, I'm not going to do this. And I remember day one, Pierre, our boss, was counting me down in my ear to go live on the very first morning
numbers
of the show.
Numbers in your ear?
Yeah. Gary hates numbers in his ear.
Numbers in my ear.
Yeah.
Just don't need this confusion.
That's why you're not a presenter, because you don't want the numbers in your ear.
I just don't want numbers
in my ear. And they're
in
not
my ear.
random, they're literally just counting down.
16, 18, 12, 4...
Nobody is saying... And he was counting down, and I remember getting this sort of frog in my throat, thinking I was going to cry, because he was on about 8, and I was thinking, in 8 seconds, I've got to take the Premier League onto a new network in a new country, and I still don't really know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that lasted...
Pressure, eh?
One day. It was tough, but ever since that day, it's felt like this is where I belong.
Yeah.
This is where I belong.
But you've had to leave, haven't you? You've had to leave English football to succeed, or to feel comfortable, sorry.
Which is not great. I do watch it now, and I cannot believe the amount of women in the game, which is amazing. I mean, I never would have thought 10 years ago how many women there are. Virtually every post-match interview is a woman's voice. It's incredible. So it's definitely more normalised.
Yeah.
And I can tell that the managers, the Eddie Howes and the Rob Edwards and those kind of men, they're easier. Yeah. They are much more of 2024, and they're much more accepting, should I say. I just think women have to be... They just still have to work twice as hard. They just have to. And I don't know when that'll stop, Gary, but if a woman makes an error, it's huge in football. So there's a lot of work that still to be done, lots of work still to be done. And the other thing is I feel really strongly about is that we aren't just giving loads of jobs to women. We can't just give loads of jobs to women to get more women in the game, because they've got to be the best. You have to be the best at your job to get, I think. Otherwise, it's just going to set everyone back again, and then it's not fair. Yeah. So that meritocracy is super important. I'm not always sure that we do that. I think we're rushing all the time to make everything equal, and then we're not putting the right people in the right position, and then they're failing, and now the perception of women then comes back again a few years, you know? So we have to do a bit of a better job at that. Yeah. What about you as a player? When you were interviewed by a woman in the late 90s and early 2000s, was it weird? Did you and the other players as well ever talk about that? Be honest.
Honestly, no, we never talked about it. And the only person that I can think of at the time that I would have been interviewed by was Claire Tomlinson, who I knew from the FA, who had been our press officer. So I can't think of any. I mean, the lead presenter of MUTV was a woman, which again, you did lots of interviews like that. Hayley McQueen was obviously started out at MUTV. So to be fair, it wasn't something that was unusual, but not something that I would even think about. And to be fair, you say that about what would be said in the dressing room. There would be nothing said about the women that were asking questions from a professional perspective in terms of, oh, she's hopeless, or what she know about. I never heard that. No, honestly. I mean, I'm not sitting here and saying we're all angels, and that there wasn't any casual sexism or anything at that time about anything. Yeah. But generally, I never heard that about reporters or about people, because our lead comms was Di Law, Dennis Law's daughter. Yeah. Yeah. So you imagine the person who was dealing with all the interviews for us was a woman.
Yeah,
so there was never. Interesting. Do you know what I mean? So there was never any sort of, and with England it was Claire. Yeah. David Davis obviously as well. So there was never any really sort of. There was never a. I'm not sitting here sort of thinking, oh, we had an amazing attitude towards women. I don't want to say that, because I don't think we did anything amazing. Yeah. I don't think there was a negative attitude towards women either.
That's good. Lots of players that I interviewed down the years, I'm now looking at now in the media, and lots of those players were so difficult. They were either, so I used to come to Carrington on a Friday and interview somebody on a sit-down interview, and they'd be like 3 hours late. And then they'd turn up and they just, not just at Man United, everywhere. Yeah. And they'd eventually turn up 3 hours later and they gave you nothing.
You know what still happens now? So when I go down to an interview, the odd time I do to Manchester United to do an interview with someone, they're usually an hour late, 45 minutes late.
I'm talking like 3 or 4 hours. I'd be sitting there 8 in the morning. Oh, actually, now he's going to do it after training. Oh, he's having a massage.
Oh, no, that's
he's going to have
one,
lunch. Oh, now he's doing the other press, and then he'll come. You're like, okay. And then when they eventually came, they didn't really want anything to do with it. I mean, and it slightly annoys me, if I'm honest.
There was an attitude.
That now, 20 years later, 10 years later, they're in the media. That annoys me.
But Joseph, now is the same though, Rebecca. The idea of like, you're on an interview on Thursday with whatever, you're like, oh, no, do I have to? Yeah. That was the attitude in the dressing room, not just of sort of coming doing it for Satanta or for anybody. It was always like, seriously? Even after the post-matches, no, it's not my turn today. I did it last week. So you're always trying to get out.
Even if you went to score a hat-trick, Rooney never wanted to come.
You're always trying to get out of the interview. And to be fair, towards the end I knew that, obviously, because I was captain, that I had to do them. But the players, just generally, their attitude is, I'm here to play football. I don't really want to speak. I don't want to do interviews. They are, I think they're better now than they've ever been, I'll be honest with you. Definitely. So I would say that when we were there, you don't remember, Sir Alex Ferguson was also protective of us in the media. Yeah. So didn't really harness the media approach about go out there and be open and go out there. He wanted us to be very sort of like siege mentality. It's us, reporters are a threat. Referees are a threat. That was the sort of mentality of how we built the sort of culture.
I don't think that was just at your club. It was like us against them. Always, how are you going to catch me out?
England was the worst. England was far worse than United, by the way. England was a massive us against them. I mean, literally, lads were frightened to death of going in doing press conferences. Yeah. And you've got to imagine, you're a 23-year-old, 24-year-old player. you're going into a massive sort of what would be press conference where there's probably about 60 to 80 people. You've got some real fierce journalists at the front who have brutalised you for the previous year.
Been there 40 years,
They've been there 30 years, you know the ones I'm talking about?
Yeah,
and they're intimidating and they're sat there at the front like that.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're a 24-year-old kid, by the way. And we're the ones as football players who were deemed as being out of order because we wouldn't speak or wouldn't give anything away. A lot of lads were frightened to death and in fear about what the consequences were.
Journalists.
It was newspaper journalists. No, radio and broadcast, I have to say.
But they used to get pulled in the same, don't you think?
They did, but no. No, broadcast and radio were always deemed to be friendlier by England players. I know that for a fact. So broadcasters and journalists would always, and radio, we would always feel more warm towards those because we never felt as though we felt as though they were more after a football angle. Whereas actually with the written press, you always felt as though there was an element of trying to catch you out.
But that's interesting because in this country, in America, there is a completely different culture around the press and sport. They talk in the dressing room, I'm sure you've seen it. You know, they're standing at their locker and there's like 7 people around them trying to get a quote. They see it much more as their duty. Do you think that's a good thing? It's not quite the same.
No, it's more of the same.
Do you think that's a good thing?
I think, to be fair, I sound like poacher term gamekeeper here because I was at United and, to be fair, was very much a certain character. But when you come out and work in the media and you work in Sky and you do interviews all the time, the reason that with the overlap we give people copy control over their interviews, I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to feel that they can say what they want and they can look at it after. If they don't like something, they can take it out. And I believe that it makes people feel comfortable. And I believe it makes them actually more open. Whereas actually sometimes you are in that feeling that when you go and do interviews, you feel like if you say the wrong thing, you're going to upset your teammates, you're going to upset your manager, you're going to upset your club, you're going to potentially get yourself in trouble. And I think lads genuinely do feel a little bit of that. Some people are not naturally good in front of camera, but I do feel now in 2024 players are a lot better than we were back in our day.
Were you media trained?
We were media trained. It's on Google if you look. There's me skulls it. I mean, it's some of the most horrendous footage you'll ever see. You need to listen to it, honestly.
But that's actually my point.
Did you see my first ever Monday Night Football?
Hi,
Roberto.
I've seen clips.
You know what I mean?
It was a little higher than that, I think.
Hi, Roberto. But what I'm saying is, that's me only 12 years ago. It's unbelievable. It's like how I was so nervous.
But don't you think there's a place for media training the 24-year-olds that you're talking about to allow them to give a bit of themselves in a cautious way? So if they're talking to a reporter that they think they might be trying to get them something, if they give them something else, because footballers don't give us anything, hardly ever. So when you get and I'm talking a trivial thing, something about the traffic on the way, anything.
But look at Christian Eriksen a couple of weeks ago where he said that the players like the hunger against their feet. We listened to that, we were grateful for it, but we then play that back and he might feel, I'm not saying that again. Or other players in the dressing room might think, I'm not going to say that again. Do you understand what I mean? So I think at times we're our own worst enemy.
Yeah.
Because we actually play back there what would be quite open statements.
Because that's journalism.
Yeah.
Do you think you're a journalist?
Do you know something? I've never called myself a journalist, a broadcaster. I genuinely have never thought of myself as one. I just don't feel that I'm sort of polished or articulate or trained in that sense.
But journalism doesn't have to be polished. You have to just have an eye for a story and nose for the story. Do you think you have? I think you have.
I think, to be fair, what I feel now is that, for instance, we set off on Central Park and you were supposed to interview me and we've spoken for the first 25 minutes.
About me?
Yeah, because I just feel like, it sounds crazy this, but we live in quite a rigid environment, don't we, in broadcast? We have breaks, we have things that we have to get through. I feel very much like I want to be free on television. I just want it to be a conversation. And I know that's not always possible, but I feel comfortable having conversations with people about football or about life or about any different subject. And I feel that's what television is to me. I feel that sometimes we overcomplicate it and make it a little bit too rigid, a bit too formulaic. I'm finding that more difficult as I get older. That's why I'm sort of migrating more towards doing commentating all the time and then doing the podcast after. I do the podcast with Peter and then I do this. I feel more comfortable in this environment just talking. I feel relaxed. You're a broadcaster because you can broadcast.
Right.
You know, people like Kelly Cates, Dave Jones that work on Sky or Mark Pugats with ITV, they're broadcasters, they genuinely live it. You're studying probably hours this weekend.
Yeah, that's why it's like, I've got to get
So if you cock up tomorrow, it's because of me.
Yeah.
But generally, you're going to be studying hours this weekend, burying your head in a book to make sure you know everything about tomorrow's show.
To keep the show on the road.
I generally, literally, I watch football.
Yeah, and talk about it.
I rock up and I talk about it. And Joe, something, the fact that I don't know what I'm going to say next and what they don't know what I'm going to say next. Basically, don't plan what you're going to say too much because it's going to be spontaneous.
That's a good thing, Gary.
It's a feeling.
That's interesting. That's a good thing because one of the you do interviews. I've seen you do Sir Keir Starmer. I've seen you do lots of walk and talk interviews like this one. It's really interesting to me because you don't have notes.
No, never.
You probably haven't done that much research.
I've actually believe it or not, for my first NBC show tomorrow.
You got some
I've
notes?
actually written notes for the first time
Since
Monday Night Football, probably 7 or 8, 9 years ago.
wow.
Literally, first time I've written notes.
And that's because you're a bit
because
nervous?
tomorrow, no, because to be fair, I'm going to be asked to do a couple of things tomorrow. That, for instance, I'm going to be asked to introduce the I think it's Brentford and Wolves team news. I
Yes,
think.
it's not that.
But it's 20
Everton
seconds.
Newcastle, I think.
It's Everton Newcastle.
Yeah, yeah.
So basically, Everton Newcastle team news come through
Yeah.
tomorrow. And look, I could wing it, and I will wing it probably, in sense that I can talk about the fact that Gordon's gone up front and that Isaac's obviously, he's not playing because he's just a little bit of bad form, and that they're trying to get Gordon and Barnes in the team, and that dynamic's working, etc. Jacob Murphy played well last week against Manchester City, so that front three stays the same. I know I can get through it, but the fact of the matter is, if they made 3 or 4 changes, and I needed to talk through the changes, you've got to be able. I can't just talk about the front 3 when they've made 4 changes. Let's say the entire back
you can't
four.
be stuck to what you prepared.
No, because let's say the back 4 tomorrow is ill for Newcastle, and there's a new back 4 comes in, and there's 2 youth players. There's a centre half that's not played for 6 months. I can't talk about them 3 up front. I'd have to talk about that.
Yes.
So there's a bit
Okay,
tomorrow,
got it.
and the fact that Newcastle have maybe conceded this amount of goals, or that. So there's a bit of preparation gone in tomorrow for what I'm doing, just to make me feel more comfortable about doing those they're like set pieces.
Yes.
So tomorrow I'm expected to do set pieces, whereas with Sky, on Monday Night Football, there's some set pieces which I prepare for, but now I don't do Monday Night Football anymore. I don't do set pieces anymore. I'll rock up in the studio after a Sunday game. I've watched the game, they'll ask me about it, and I'll just speak.
Right.
And I'm better when I'm like that.
What makes you nervous in life?
So to be fair, the things that make me nervous, out of my comfort zone, have I got news for you?
Oh,
Dragon's Den,
I don't.
live shows, where people have a ticketed audience, where people are expecting there to be an entertainment, and you know what I mean?
Yep. And you can see the viewer. Yep.
If I'm interviewing someone, at the start of the It's Called Soccer show, when we went to interview Maurizio, I was nervous before I interviewed Maurizio, even though I know him, I've interviewed him before, because I knew that it was for something new and that it was a bit of... So things that are new, but I always say yes, by the way.
Because you don't mind being pushed out of your comfort
So
zone.
every 3 years, if you look at my sort of, coming out of football 2011, every 3 years I've changed.
Yeah.
And I changed dramatically. So first 3 years, completely bedded into Monday Night Football, me and Ed.
Yep.
Then I was asked the question, are you okay if Carragher comes in? And I could have vetoed it at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I want this change. I always knew I wanted change. So we did it for the next 3 years with Cara. After that, I then started doing sort of like documentaries and the production side of things. So I did Soccer Box, presenting my own show, the Soccer Box series and stuff like that, which was a massive step out of my comfort zone. 3 years after that, I set up the Overlap and started doing Long Conversation. Now I'm doing NBC, and so every 3 years, I will say, right, what am I doing in this next 3 years? And it can't be the same as the previous 3. I believe that people get tired of me doing the same thing, and they'll get bored of it. So if me and Cara carried on doing Monday Night Football for 12 years non-stop, he did it with Graham Potter the other night. It was fantastic. I watched it at home, and it's brilliant because you've got a different voice. You've got a Premier League manager. It's fantastic. The best advice I ever got when I first went into television was, I didn't want to do Monday Night Football. I said no. I didn't want to do co-commentary. I wanted just to sit in the studio and be the analyst on Super Sunday matches.
Warm and cosy.
And Scott, again up there, said to me, and he was very brutal with me, best advice I ever got, he said, Gary, he said in 7 or 8 years, when the next Gary Neville comes out of the studio, and it was people like Roy Keane, Micah Richards have come into Sky, there isn't a position for you today, Gary. So you better get up in that commentary box.
Right.
So I'm up in the commentary box.
Yeah.
I can do Monday Night Football, I can do commentary, or I can do, so you're adaptable. I can do interviews, I can go and interview managers now, so if you said to me, I've got 4 things that I can do within Sky, I think I could remain relevant doing co-commentary. I could do bits of studio, I could do podcasts, I could interview a manager if they wanted me to go in, and I feel that I've tried everything. Whereas co-commentary, I still get immense criticism for it to this day, because it's the thing that I actually still find most difficult.
There is no doubt in England that you are very powerful. Your voice is very powerful. For example, United the other day the words that you use ended up in the papers the next day. People love to use them as headlines.
Yeah.
Gary Neville said. Gary Neville said a lot. You hear it on podcasts, on the radio, TV. Are you aware that that's a responsibility? Do you feel that power?
I do feel, I don't feel the power, but I do know that your voice carries weight. But I also feel that sometimes that, you know, words that I use, I think, oh, come back, I wish I'd not said that.
Yeah.
And I feel like some words that I've used in the last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I wish I'd not used, and I still do it to this day, where I use a word that grabs the attention, which, by the way, is my job. My job as a broadcaster for Sky to grab the attention and to hit people at home with my words, to tell the narrative. But then sometimes I can think, I could easily make my life a lot more easy. I could have said last week when United played Tottenham, United were extremely poor in that first half.
You just left it at that.
That's not what people are looking
No,
for.
they're not.
They want the coffin lid open. They want to see the autopsy live in front of them. And sometimes you get drawn into that and you'll use a word like atrocious or disgusting or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I might go back and say, look, why have I used that word? What's the point? But you know something? The relative it is that I have got a job and I will speak with passion and honesty like fans will speak. I imagine what fans are saying. They're saying that performance was a fucking joke.
Yeah,
It was a disgrace.
you have to match that.
I'd rather be able to say on television that performance was a fucking joke, it was a disgrace. I'll tell you where I was critical of a player that I used to play with, and the one time I've probably broken that sort of what would be was the Cristiano exit at United.
Right. Yeah.
When he did the interview with Piers Morgan, who it's nothing to do with doing the interview with Piers Morgan. My concern that night was his teammates had just won that day, Garnacho had scored at Fulham, and then the interview came out a few hours later.
Takes the attention away.
So I just thought that the timing of that was really disappointing, and I thought it was the wrong time to do the interview, and probably the wrong way to exit Manchester United was my view. And I felt strongly about that because of his leadership qualities, his stature in the game, and the fact that I felt he could be a leader at United and pull that dressing room through. Now, it's not like he can do whatever he wants, and he's done it, and he may think that it was the right thing to do, but I felt strongly at the time that wasn't right. And because of the fact that I was a senior player in the dressing room when Cristiano was younger, I felt, no, come on, that's not how you work, that's not how we work, that's not how you do it. Now, I've made mistakes as well, so you don't sit there and think, I've made loads of mistakes. So the times where maybe, that's the one time I can think of where I've probably criticised an ex-teammate, where I've thought, no, that's not right, Cristiano.
Do you think that was slightly because you still feel, not seniority as in above him, but because he was so young when you were there?
I still felt a way, probably guidance, to say, look, come on, mate, you're wrong there, come on. You know what's right and wrong. We know, you go through a lot with each other when you play with each other at United, and the demands are high, the expectations high, and you know when you've fucked up and you've cocked up. And I used to do cock up a lot and still make mistakes now on television and in other walks of life. But the fact of the matter is, that was for me, no, I've got to call that out because I thought that was wrong.
When you make a mistake, does it sit with you as a broadcaster? Do you drive home afterwards? I don't mean saying a word that you wish you could pull back. I mean, when you make mistakes on air, which we all do, does it bother you, or are you quite good at moving on?
So it will maybe on the way home in the car, if I've got a car journey home, say, it'll sit with me. It will never sit with me the morning after.
Wow, so you get over it throughout the night?
Yeah, because I move on that quickly. I can compartmentalise things now in a box, unless I get the call from Sky on the Monday morning, which does sometimes happen, where basically they'll say, look, and you sometimes say, I've gone too far there.
Do you ever watch yourself back?
I've never watched. I've watched one overlap programme back.
Have you ever watched yourself on Sky?
Never.
You haven't sat down.
Sorry,
Sky
Monday Night Football in the early days. I never watched myself back ever.
Because.
Ever. I think now I'm aware of what I've done. Partly because I think if I've done, my feedback from my producers and directors is important. They'll tell me if I've done something wrong. I've always had an open relationship with them. I think that in respect of now, you get to a point where, like, you know yourself. You don't have to watch it back to know. You know, don't you?
Yeah.
Like you've done it long enough to know that if I make a mistake on commentary or I've made a mistake in a production or whatever, I know I've made a mistake.
Okay.
So I don't need to watch it back to see it. I'll know it. And also now, you'll get told pretty quickly by someone.
Media.
Yeah. Or your producer will come, will press the button and you'll be like, Gary, you just said this.
Yeah.
I always remember. One of my first year in Monday Night Football, and I was talking about Antonio Valencia.
Yeah.
And I said, Antonio Valencia, I absolutely love him to bits. He doesn't fanny around. Now, that's something that's said in local, in Lancashire and north of England.
Yeah.
And Scott came in my ear, and he said, Gary, it's Scottish. It's my poor Scottish accent. Don't say fanny on my programme.
Love it. Did you apologise?
Yeah, but I didn't say. No, I didn't apologise. No, but I thought straight away a little bit of a panic on, don't you? You know what I mean? It's like, Gary, don't say fanny on my programme.
Now, for our American audience, that word is completely different.
What's fanny mean in
Backside.
America? Oh right,
So,
okay.
So you know the bum bags that we have in England?
Right.
They're called fanny packs.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
Right,
Yes,
okay.
they are. I've tried to explain. It's not ideal. All right. Last question. What's your biggest weakness?
Biggest weakness?
Yeah. Not on TV, in life.
I think it's not knowing when to stop, and I suppose the speed of my life and the fact that I think one day I'll probably make myself ill.
But is that also your biggest strength?
It's my biggest strength. That's what I was going to say. And my biggest strength is my biggest weakness, because I think there's so many people now in this last few years have said to me, slow down, because it's health is the most important thing. So basically, so you say to yourself, why am I flying to New York on a Thursday? Why am I doing this? Why have I set up a podcast in America? Why am I now on NBC? Why have I made my life more difficult? Brian Kidd used to say to me, get your pace early, you can't make it up at the end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Go all out.
Don't jog
Go
and then
all
sprint.
out.
Yeah, go all out,
But
go for it.
Here's a question, might be too personal. You have to be in a marriage, don't you, when somebody is like that and the other person has to understand them and support them, because you can't be that kind of person and have a partner who doesn't understand, because that ain't going to happen.
Oh no, I mean.
So how much does Emma support your 100 million miles an hour life?
Absolutely. I mean, to be fair also, I think the reason that we obviously get on so well as well is that she's the complete opposite of me.
Yeah.
So when I go home, I'm like this sort of like whirlwind most of the day. At home, I have no football memorabilia in my house. I do now because of the podcast actually.
Oh, yeah.
But
In the corner.
no reminders of football in the house. I will literally go home, I won't say hardly anything. I will sit there so relaxed and just be completely the opposite of how I am at work. And she creates that environment of peace, I think, at home. You know what I mean?
Maybe that's keeping you going.
and
Maybe
the
that little respite is what's keeping you balanced.
And that's why I think at the moment, I'm trying to basically be as efficient as I possibly can. So cut as many things out of my life that I don't need to do.
Yeah.
Do the things that I love doing, which is things like this.
Yeah.
And then make sure that I book the days off in that I need to be able to recover from it.
Yeah.
So next weekend, for instance, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're going to Lake District as an example.
Yeah.
Now I know that there's a real hard, travelling week,
Yeah.
you're going to give it a lot this week, loads of meetings, but you've then got 3 days. I still feel that like other people have far tougher existence than I have.
Right, because we talk about how busy we are and there are jobs that are a lot harder.
Absolutely.
Just quickly, what's your biggest achievement in your whole life?
I think it's that I can look back and say that I couldn't have done any more every day. I couldn't
In
look
every area?
In every area. I don't think I could look back from the age of 6, 7 when I first remember existing. I don't think I could look back and say that I could have done more. My dad said that to me when I joined United. Don't look back and wish you could have done more. And I do believe it's the best bit of advice I ever got, because that's all you can do, is give your all. And I think, to be fair, a lot of people do that. It's not just me, but I think that's something to be proud of.
Absolutely. Should we have a coffee?
Yeah. Well done.
Well done. That's just what Fergie used to say to me.
Well done.
Well done at the end.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that bonus episode of It's Called Soccer. Plenty more to come on the US Overlap channel in the coming weeks, including our regular episode, which comes out this week on Friday. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on YouTube, on Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts, and leave us a comment in the comments section. We will see you on Friday.